Hi there. I am here at my office in the Pocahontas building, and it's Friday, and I'm about to head out for the week. But I definitely wanted to give you an update prior to leaving. It has been quite a busy last couple of weeks, and we've had movement on some of our bills. And so I just want to jump right into legislation. So, starting with House Bill 2000, that was the bill that we put in with the research that we had done around the Aqua Vista apartment situation, finding out that apartment owners and property managers only had to cool a room to 80 degrees. And so we put in a bill, and then we found out that it's actually going to be quicker and maybe easier to work through the regulatory process. And so there may be some movement on that in March. So please stay tuned. We have the support of all of the stakeholders that I've talked with, and even the chair of our committee, the General Laws Committee, is planning on sending a letter to the Department of Housing and Community Development to make sure that our support for this change to lowering the minimum degrees that a room must be cooled to in order to make it an actual livable temperature. We also have House Bill 2473, and that is where we put in a bill with the Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and we were working to get minimum wage exemptions removed that were based on Jim Crow era philosophy, where those jobs that were listed being exempt from having being paid minimum wage were actually historically held by African Americans. So that bill actually passed out of the House, out of the Senate committee, and has passed out of the Senate and is headed to the governor for signature. So I'm very happy with that result. We also had House Bill 1998. As you'll remember, that's the one that would expedite a hearing for public safety officials, school officials, and healthcare professionals if they were exposed to bodily fluids of another person, and that person either did not give consent or was unable to give consent for their blood to be tested, so that we could know what that professional had been exposed to in the course of their duties. That also passed out of the House, the Senate courts, and then the Senate, and is headed to signature to become law. House Bill 1997, which I fondly called Francesca's bill. That was the one where the mother had reached out to me on Twitter, just looking for someone to help make her daughter's ideas become law. And we have effectively been able to do that. We got a bill that basically says that the principal, upon notification of a student having a protective order to protect them or having a protective order taken out on them, the principal can let others at the school know who have a vested interest in helping to keep the child safe, knowing that the principal really isn't the one moving along with the student in their moment to moment actions. And so now students will have adult help in either navigating a safety plan or helping a student who has been charged or has a protective order taken out against them, helping them navigate it so that they won't become further court involved as well. And so that has now passed out of the House. It passed out of the Education and Health Subcommittee in the Senate and the Senate Education and Health Full Committee, and that will be going to the Senate floor next week for a full vote, and that passed out uncontested, so we are super hopeful that all 40 senators will feel the need to support that legislation to get that up for signature to become law as well. House Bill 2035 was a bill that I was carrying along with the Department of Medical Assistance Services, DMAS. And that was the one that there's a legal requirement for a DMAS provider to provide proof of having gotten a fingerprint background check and their eligibility. But then also there was a technicality in the code that prevented them from communicating such information. So legally required, but also legally prohibited. So we wanted to fix that because as of right now, the only exception exception to that is transportation providers, but we want that to be all DMAS providers so that they can easily transmit that information to DMAS. That has also passed out of the House and the Senate and is headed to get a signature to become law. House Bill 2693, that was the bill about the qualified mental health professionals. And so in 2017, we passed language that would create the qualified mental health professionals, create a definition, and also allow for the board to have a registry of QMHPs for accountability and tracking, and also to kind of build this pipeline from QMHPs, hopefully then to licensed clinical professionals. And so in the implementation of that since 2017, the board found out that it was actually 3 different categories of QMHPs: a QMHP-A, which works with adults, a QMHP-C that works with children, and a QMHP-T that is a trainee. And so now that bill having passed out of the House and the Senate and going up for signature to become law, those categories will be codified and able for the board to really do some great work with our qualified mental health professionals who are really doing some amazing things in the world of mental health. House Bill 1995, that was the bill that I had put in for the Newport News charter change. And so right now, the Newport News charter says that the first meeting after a new city council election must be held at 10 a.m. And because it's in our charter, we have to have a bill that goes through the General Assembly to change the Newport News charter. That bill, another delegate had put in a bill, House Bill 1766, so mine got incorporated into that, and House Bill 1766 has passed the House and the Senate, and so that charter change will become effective once we get that signature. And I believe in the absence of an emergency clause, it will become effective on July 1st, meaning the next round of city council elections. That next meeting, the city council can decide what time the first organizational meeting will be with the new city council after the next elections. And maybe and hopefully they'll put that in the evening so we can get more citizen participation after folks get off work, and so they can be a part of that process. And then House Bill 1994 was the one that I was working with Newport News on as well, trying to allow for local law enforcement to be able to process the legally required fingerprint background checks for child daycare programs. And when my bill went through, it had a fiscal impact statement that did not pass appropriations. So my bill got out of the House Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee, but then died in the Appropriations Committee. But Senator Mason had Senate Bill 1407, which was the cognate, and they were able to make some amendments in order to get this through without the fiscal impact statement. And so that is making its way through the legislative process. So that's pretty exciting. And then, of course, I know you remember House Joint Resolution 630, which I'm working with the Catalyst Effect and the Silence Empowers Violence Action to Awareness to Action Week, which would be the third full week of September, being that awareness week statewide. And that bill passed out of the House, and that goes to Senate Rules, and we will talk with Senate Rules about that on Monday. And so stay tuned. Hopefully it was uncontested in the House, so hopefully the senators on Senate Rules will see its value as well and pass that to the Senate floor, and then that will be in place once that passes the Senate Rules Committee and then the full Senate, and then heads to the governor for signature. Some of the other exciting things that have been going on here, we had several visitors, and we had visitors from NASA that I was able to introduce from the House floor. They were there for their Aeronautics Day, and we had folks from NASA Langley and Wallops, and the work that they are doing is really, really fascinating. And I just love hearing them talk and kind of nerding out on some of the new technologies that have implications for aeronautics, but also other forms of work. There were some materials that NASA discovered or made that was very helpful to firefighters that were fighting forest fires on large scales. So that was interesting. And then we also had folks from the shipyard and the apprentice school. So we were able to help them celebrate this year. The apprentice school turns 100 as it was formalized in 1919. And I was able to introduce them as well from the House floor. And we also passed a resolution celebrating their 100 years. And I am sure you will hear more about the celebrations that are occurring this year as we celebrate. We also had a visit from Transitions Family Violence Services doing really important work in our community. And so they were up here lobbying for certain legislation that they saw to be important. And then we had both Newport News and Hampton Healthy Families Initiative come through and talk about the amazing work that they're doing with parents to help make sure our children have a strong and healthy foundation so that they can build upon that and chase their dreams and be all that they can be. And then, of course, we had a visit from Centerra. So Kapua Conley was here, the president of Centerra Careplex. And so I was able to have a good conversation with him and some of the legislation that they're watching that would impact hospitals and their ability to give quality care. Excuse me, and then there were some visitors from the Newport News Airport, and so it was good, really good to see folks from back home, and I'll post pictures and everything of that, and I'll also post the video of those introductions from the House floor. But it's been really interesting to see the legislation go through the legislative process and to be able to talk about it and focus on it. I'll be posting a speech that I gave about our tax bills and what economic equity would really look like in a tax bill. And it talks about some of our ability to really take seriously this Commonwealth-wide conversation of racial equity and what that means as it pertains to legislation. I also have a Black History Month point of personal privilege or speech that I gave today. And that was about the erasure of Black women's voices and stories from history and how we really have to tell the whole story of our history in order for it to be a true and accurate accounting. So I'll be sure to post those videos. And I will also be posting each of these steps that each of these bills had to go through, from the initial introduction in my House subcommittee to the committee, to then the House floor, to then the Senate committee, then the Senate. So at least 5 steps, if not more, for some of these bills to really show you what it looks like at each of the steps. And so we'll be putting together those videos so that you can see. This is our this is the last day before the last week of session, and so we are going into our last week of session on Monday, and so that is when decisions will be made about the budget, how we are prioritizing issues that impacts your life, and how we are spending your tax dollars. So it will be really important for you to stay tuned every day, or I try every day, but I'm tweeting out information and ways that you can stay engaged. But please feel free to reach out by email, phone, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Reach out, and if you have questions or if there are things that you couldn't quite follow but you want to know more information about, just let us know, and Tempest and I stand here at the ready to give you that information and perspective. But it's really, I think, one of the best sessions for me because I've had real life experiences, whether in my district or even across different parts of the Commonwealth, where issues we were made aware of issues, and then we were able to get to solutions pretty quickly and in a collaborative way that will positively impact the residents of the 95th District and beyond. And so it has been my absolute pleasure to be here working hard on your behalf. But we're not done yet. Like I said, we have one more week. And so I look forward to coming to you with a final update next week. Until then, I will see you later.